I remember the heat first. Not the gunshots, not the blood, not even my brother's face going pale under that desert sun. Just the heat. The kind that bakes regret into a man's bones. We were 3 days out of Abilene, chasing rumors about a wagon train that never made it. My brother Eli rode ahead like he always did. He trusted the horizon. I trusted him. That morning the wind was dead, the sky was white, and the desert was so quiet it felt like God had turned his face away. I found him in the sand with his hat off and his hand still reaching for his rifle. No signs of a struggle, no horse tracks leading away, just one set of boot prints circling him like a buzzard. Whoever did it was calm, patient, close enough to look him in the eyes. I knelt down, brushed the dust off his shirt, and something in me snapped. Not loud, not violent, just final. I'd buried men before, outlaws, strangers, men who deserved it. But shoveling dirt over your own blood? That's different. That makes the world smaller. I dug with my hands because I didn't have time for ceremony. The desert doesn't let a man mourn. Coyotes, vultures, and heat don't care about sorrow. I laid him down in a shallow grave under a mesquite tree that didn't even give real shade. I didn't pray. I didn't cry. I just promised him I'd find the man who did it, and I'd make him remember Eli's face the way I did. There are oaths you make in churches, and oaths you make in dirt. The dirt ones stick harder. After I buried him, I started seeing things I hadn't noticed. A torn match envelope from a saloon in Redwater, a strange spur mark in the sand, Mexican make, but with a northern pattern. And the way the killer walked? Heavy on the right foot. A man don't walk like that unless he's been shot before or he's carrying something he shouldn't. I took what the desert gave me and rode west with anger for water. I didn't know his name yet, didn't know his reason. But I knew this. He wasn't running. He was waiting. And that's the worst part. I thought I was hunting him. Turned out he'd already set the trail. Every town I stopped in, every man who wouldn't look me in the eye, every bartender who suddenly remembered chores in the back. They all knew something I didn't. My brother hadn't just been killed, he'd been silenced. And I was riding straight into the story that got him buried. This is how it happened. This is how I buried Eli in the desert, and then found the man who put him there. Out here, in the lands where the sun burns the names off tombstones and justice rides slower than death, men don't always die in gunfights. Sometimes they're erased. My name doesn't matter yet. What matters is the promise I made over a hot grave in the middle of nowhere. I wasn't just looking for a killer, I was looking for the reason. Because in the Old West, men kill for money, land, whiskey, women. But when a man is shot clean and left with clues that point nowhere, that's not rage. That's message. And if you're listening to this right now, wherever you are, in a city far from dust, or in a country where deserts don't look like ours, I want you to stay with me till the end. Because this isn't just a story about revenge. It's about a trail that led farther than I thought, through towns that pretended not to know me, through men who'd rather sell their soul than tell the truth. I found cattle thieves, bounty hunters, an ex-preacher with whiskey on his breath, and a marshal who'd rather bury the past than face it. And in the end, I found out why Eli had to die. Before we ride, do something for me. Hit subscribe, leave your like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, city and country. I want to know how far this dust travels, because I'm about to tell you what really happened on that trail, and why a grave in the desert woke up every ghost I thought I'd buried. Settle in. Saddle up. This is the story of the man who killed my brother, and the price he paid. The first town I rode into after burying Eli was called Redwater, a place that looked like it was built just to rot slower than the men who lived there. The sign at the edge of town leaned sideways, riddled with bullet holes, and the air smelled of whiskey, sweat, and secrets. My horse Dust limped from a cracked hoof, and every step echoed like a warning. Folks watched me from behind half-open shutters. That's how you know you're getting close to something ugly. People start pretending they ain't there. I tied Dust outside the saloon. The piano inside stopped before I even pushed the doors open. Men turned slow, eyes narrowing. hands near belts but not touching. I walked to the counter, ordered whiskey, and placed the match envelope I'd found near Eli's body on the wood. "You pour drinks for a man wearing these spurs?" I asked the bartender. He froze for a heartbeat, long enough to tell me I was in the right place. "Ain't seen that kind around here lately," he said, but his eyes flicked to a corner table where a man sat alone, chewing tobacco and pretending not to listen. His boots matched the print from the desert, heavy on the right. My pulse slowed. When you're close to something that matters, the world gets real quiet. I took my drink and sat near the door. Waited. The man stood after a while, spit into the sawdust, and walked past me. He didn't look my way, just muttered something to the bartender and pushed through the doors into the sun. I followed him out, 10 steps behind, my hand resting on the Colt like a promise. He stopped beside the hitching post, lit a cigar, and said without turning around, "You bury him deep?" That voice. Calm, low, confident. He knew exactly who I was. "Deep enough," I said, "but not so deep I can't dig him up again, if it helps me remember what I'm gonna do to you." He laughed. Not loud, not scared, just tired, like a man who'd been waiting for this too long. Then he said, "You think you know what you're chasing, but you don't. Your brother wasn't the man you thought he was." I drew first. Not to kill, just to test him. He was faster. His bullet tore the brim of my hat clean off before I even cleared leather. I dove behind a trough, dust exploding in my teeth, horses screaming. When I looked again, he was gone. Only the cigar still burned in the dirt where he'd stood. He'd left a note pinned to the hitch post with his knife. "Red water ain't where it started." I picked up the knife. Mexican steel, same make as the spur. He wanted me to follow, maybe to finish it, maybe to see what Eli had been hiding. The blade had a mark etched into it, a circle split by a cross. I'd seen that once before, years back, on the saddle of a man who worked for the Blackridge Company, a mining outfit that had more graves than gold. Eli had sworn he'd never deal with them again. I rode out that afternoon, the sun behind me, the wind dry as bone. I followed the tracks until they vanished into the canyons. Every few miles I found something left behind. A burnt match, a torn map, a bullet casing filed smooth, like breadcrumbs from a ghost. He was leading me, yes, but not away. He wanted me to see something, to understand what my brother had done. That night I camped under the stars and stared at the knife until the steel caught the moonlight. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear, from the kind of truth that starts to take shape before you can admit it. Maybe Eli hadn't just been killed. Maybe he'd been judged, and I was riding toward the same verdict. The coyotes sang in the dark, and the wind carried dust over the fire. I closed my eyes and heard Eli's voice. Not the way he sounded when we were boys, but the way he sounded when he lied. "Don't follow me if something happens," he'd said once. I should have listened, because out here the dead don't rest easy, and the living don't ride alone for long. The road to Dust Hollow looked like it hadn't been used since the world began. Canyons rose on both sides like open jaws, and every gust of wind felt like a whisper from something buried. My horse's hooves struck rock instead of soil, and the echo carried far, too far. Somewhere above, a vulture traced slow circles, patient as time. I'd followed the trail for 2 days without sleep, following that man's signs. Burned matches, boot prints heavy on the right, and once, a piece of cloth torn from a duster coat. He wanted me to come here. When Dust Hollow finally appeared, it wasn't much more than a scar in the earth. The buildings leaned like they were tired of standing. A church bell hung cracked in its frame, and the air smelled of metal and smoke. As I rode in, I passed a sign half buried in sand. Blackridge Mining Co. The letters were faded, but the symbol below, a circle cut by a cross, matched the mark on the knife. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't just a trail. It was a graveyard that learned how to stand upright. A man came out of the general store, gray beard, limp, shotgun tucked under his arm. "We don't get many riders out this way," he said, squinting at me like sunlight hurt. "You with Blackridge?" "Was," I said. "Long time ago." "Then you ought to keep riding." He spat in the dust. "Ain't nothing left here but bones that don't stay buried." He wasn't wrong, but I was already too deep to turn back. Inside the saloon, the piano was covered in dust, keys yellowed like old teeth. Behind the bar, a woman poured herself a drink. She had eyes like smoke and a scar that cut through her lip. When she saw the knife I laid on the counter, she froze. "Where'd you get that?" "Off the ground near my brother's body." "Then you're about 3 days late," she whispered. "The man who carried that knife was here. Said he was looking for a witness. Left in a hurry after the sheriff came back from the mines." "The mines?" I asked. "North Ridge. They shut down after the cave-in. Folks said it was gas, but..." She looked around, lowered her voice. "Some say they heard voices coming out of the shaft. Not men's voices. Like something got loose down there." I didn't believe her. Not then. But I'd seen enough men lie with their eyes to know when fear was telling the truth. I found the sheriff's office locked. The door looked recently repaired, but the wood smelled of fresh blood. I kicked it open. Inside, the room was neat except for one thing. A map spread across the desk with red circles drawn around abandoned sites. At the bottom corner, next to the Black Ridge logo, someone had written, "Shipment 47, Confidential." Eli's handwriting. My chest went tight. Eli had worked for the company before, scouting routes, guarding convoys, but he'd quit after a job in the desert went wrong. He said it was over gold, but gold doesn't make a man's eyes look that haunted. Now I was staring at proof he'd gone back. Maybe not by choice. Maybe whatever Black Ridge found out here pulled him back in. The floorboards creaked behind me. I turned fast, gun drawn, and found a kid no older than 12 standing in the doorway, clutching a lantern. "You're him, ain't you?" he said. "The one looking for the man with the limp." "You seen him?" "Saw him heading toward the mines last night, but mister..." The boy's voice cracked. "You shouldn't follow. People don't come back from there." I knelt beside the kid, trying to keep my voice steady. What did he look like? Tall, black coat, wore a bandana over his mouth, talked to himself, said he wasn't scared of the dark 'cause he made it. My blood turned colder than creek water in winter. The killer wasn't just hiding. He was performing, drawing me in like a stagehand pulling curtains, and I was already in the front row. I left town before dawn. The mines waited like a mouth carved into the mountain. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but promises made in dirt don't break easy. I tightened my grip on the Colt, looked once at the horizon where my brother's grave sat miles behind me, and said out loud, "Eli, if you're out there in the dust, I'm going where you went." Then I rode toward the dark, and the dark answered. The entrance to the Black Ridge mine looked like a wound in the earth, black, open, and humming with the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. The wooden beams holding it up were splintered and blackened, as if scorched from the inside. My lantern flickered the moment I stepped closer, like it was trying to warn me. The air smelled of iron and something else, something old and wet. I tied Dust to a post outside, though I wasn't sure I'd see him again. Animals know when something in the dark is wrong. I lit a fresh match, watched the flame shiver, and stepped into the shaft. The ground was slick with something that looked like oil but clung like blood. The tunnel stretched ahead in crooked ribs of timber, walls sweating, ceiling low. My footsteps echoed too long, like there were more of me than there should have been. At 50 yards in, the wind changed, cold, fast, and coming from below. That shouldn't have been possible. Mines don't breathe, but this one did. The first chamber opened up wide enough to hold a dozen men. Rusted tools, broken helmets, and bones, long, pale bones, were scattered like confetti after a massacre. On the far wall, scratched into the stone, was that same circle and cross mark. It was bigger now, carved deep, almost burned. Below it were the words, "They don't sleep." The letters looked fresh. The man I was chasing had been here, maybe he still was. I heard movement, soft, dragging, rhythmic. It came from a tunnel to the left. I raised the lantern and the light caught something shining, a spur, half buried in dust. I knelt, brushed it off. Mexican make, northern pattern. The match, the knife, the mark, all connected. Then I heard a voice, low, broken. whispering my name. Jonah, my brother's voice, coming from the dark. I froze. Every part of me screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Eli, I said. The voice came again, closer this time, strained like breath through gravel. Jonah, don't dig. My lantern flickered, then died. The dark swallowed everything. And in that pitch black, I heard breathing, not one, but many. Slow, uneven, too deep to belong to men. The sound of something that had been asleep for a long time. Waking up. I struck another match, and for half a second, the chamber was alive with shapes. Dozens of them crawling along the walls and ceiling. Pale, thin, stretched like skin over bones, faces hidden behind cloth. Their eyes reflected the flame like glass. Then the match burned out. I fired blindly into the dark. The gunshots echoed back like mockery. Whatever they were, they didn't scream. They just moved. I ran, down the wrong tunnel. My boots hit water, or something thicker. The smell was unbearable. I slipped, fell hard, my lantern shattering. In the flash of the fall, I saw it. A man's body sitting upright against the wall, eyes open, jaw slack. Eli, or what was left of him. His skin was gray, cracked, his lips moving without sound. On his chest, carved deep, was that same symbol. Only this time it wasn't burned. It was glowing. I grabbed him by the shoulders, shaking him. Eli, tell me who did this. His eyes rolled toward me, unfocused. His mouth opened, but the voice that came out wasn't his. It was the other man's. Calm, patient, the one with the limp. He killed himself, Jonah. He dug too deep. We all did. Then Eli's head fell forward, and his body collapsed like dust. When I looked up, the man with the limp was standing in the tunnel's mouth, half lit by the dying lantern. You shouldn't have followed, he said. His face was older than I remembered from Redwater. His right leg trembled, but his hand was steady on his gun. You think you came here for revenge. You came here to finish what your brother started. Behind him, the shadows were moving again, crawling closer. What did he start? I asked. He smiled, slow and sad. A door. He opened a door, and now something's walking through it. The tunnel shook, rocks fell. A sound rose from below, deep, guttural, hungry. The man turned and fired into the dark, shouting, "It's awake!" Then something pulled him back, fast, violent, like he'd been snatched by the throat. His scream echoed once, then stopped. I ran for the surface, lungs burning, dragging what was left of Eli's coat. When I burst into daylight, the sun looked wrong, dull, red like it was dying. And for the first time since I buried him, I felt cold. The desert was quiet again, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I didn't sleep that night. The desert stretched out around me like a giant grave, and I kept seeing the glow of that symbol behind my eyelids every time I blinked. Eli had opened a door. That's what the man said. A door to what, though? The wind came down from the canyon, carrying whispers that weren't there a moment before. I could have sworn one of them said my name. When dawn finally came, it looked sick, pale and bruised. The sun rose slow, like it didn't want to see what was left of this place. I rode west until the mine was a scar behind me. Every few miles I'd find something that didn't belong. A wagon wheel half buried in sand, bones picked clean but arranged in neat little circles, like someone had been counting. Around noon, I reached what used to be the Black Ridge Depot. Only 2 buildings still stood, a barn and a small office shack. The rest had been eaten by sand, but the sign nailed to the barn door made my stomach twist. Shipment 47, do not unseal. Eli's handwriting again. The door was chained shut, but the lock was already broken. I pushed it open, the hinges screaming like something alive. Inside, it smelled of copper and rot. There were crates stacked to the rafters, all stamped with the same mark, the circle and cross. One of them had been pried open. Inside wasn't gold or ore or anything I'd seen before. It was rock, black as coal but humming faintly, like it had a heartbeat. Beneath it, streaks of something tar-like had leaked onto the wood. I leaned closer, and for a moment I could swear I heard whispers coming from it. Not words, just sounds, deep and low, like breath under stone. Then a voice behind me said, "You shouldn't touch that." I turned, gun drawn. The saloon woman from Dust Hollow stood in the doorway, pale, dust all over her dress. "How the hell did you find me?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just pointed at the black rock and said, "That's what killed your brother." She told me the story like a confession. Blackridge found that ore 6 months ago, deep beneath the ridge. The first miners who touched it went blind. The second group started talking in their sleep, in a language no one knew. By the time the company realized it wasn't gold, it was too late. They sealed the shaft, labeled the shipments quarantined, and sent the survivors away with a few dollars and a warning. Never speak of it again. But Eli had gone back, to dig one last time. "He thought it could be sold," she said. "Said it was worth more than gold. But after he brought it out, people started dying. Not by guns, they just stopped. Like something took the life right out of them." She stepped closer, voice shaking. "That man you're chasing, the one with the limp, he was Blackridge's foreman. He knew what was buried under there. He tried to stop Eli, but he was already too late." I looked back at the rock. The whispers were louder now, almost a chant, echoing off the walls in a rhythm that made my skin crawl. I wanted to shoot it, burn it, bury it again. Anything but listen. "Where's the foreman now?" I asked. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "He's not a man anymore," she said. "He's guarding what's left of them, down by the ridge." And before I could stop her, she turned and ran into the desert, screaming something I couldn't understand. I stood there, alone, surrounded by crates filled with the same black stone humming in the dark. Then I saw it, carved into the inside of one of the lids. "Jonah, if you find this, don't open the rest." Eli had known I'd come. My hands started shaking. I backed away from the crates, but the humming grew louder, the sound turning into a voice that wasn't a voice, calling my name in a dozen whispers that all sounded like him. I ran outside, gulping air that felt too thin, too hot. The ground trembled beneath my boots, faint but steady. From the ridge in the distance, a column of dust rose straight into the sky, like a signal or a warning. The mine wasn't done. Whatever Eli had brought out of that hole wanted to go back, and the man with the limp was still out there, waiting for me to follow the trail to its end. I loaded my gun, mounted Dust, and looked toward that red horizon. The desert wasn't just land anymore. It was something awake, watching, breathing. I could feel its heartbeat under the sand. Eli had dug too deep, and now I was about to finish what he started. The wind carried a whisper through the canyon, soft as a prayer. "Come see what we found." I rode toward it. Because men like me don't turn away from ghosts. We chase them. By the time I reached the ridge, the sun had gone blood red. The wind howled like the land was mourning itself, and every mile closer the air grew heavier, like breathing through dust and ash. The ridge rose sharp against the horizon, carved with paths that led nowhere, and halfway up I saw light, a single lantern swinging from a cave mouth. The limp in his step gave him away before his face did. The foreman was waiting, rifle across his knees, a shadow sitting in judgment. "You followed," he said, voice cracked from sand and smoke. "I told you not to." "You killed my brother," I said. "You buried him out here like a dog." He shook his head. "No. Your brother killed himself the day he opened that crate." The wind tore across us, carrying the faint hum from below, the same pulse I'd heard in the mine. "You're guarding it," I said. "Why?" "Because something's got to," he replied. "And because once you've heard it whisper your name, you never get far enough to forget." I raised my Colt. He didn't flinch. "You think this is revenge," he said, "but it's inheritance." He pointed to the desert floor. "There's more buried under your boots than sand, boy. The company didn't find gold. They found something that remembers. Every man who's touched that stone hears it until he joins it." His eyes glowed faintly in the dying light, not reflection. Something inside them burning soft and red. I fired. The bullet hit him square in the chest, but he didn't fall. The echo bounced through the canyon like thunder, and the ground shuddered beneath us. He looked down, blood spreading dark across his shirt, and said, "It's too late, the door's open." Then the sand around us started to move, slow at first, then faster, spiraling like water down a drain. The earth groaned. Something was coming up. I backed away, boots sinking. Beneath the swirling sand, shapes began to rise. Bones, ribs, hands, skulls, hundreds of them, forming a circle around the ridge. They weren't buried bodies. They were grown together, like the earth had made them from the men who died here. From the center of that pit, light broke through, the same color as the stone, pulsing like a heartbeat. The hum turned to words now. 1,000 voices, whispering one name, mine. The foreman staggered toward the pit, blood dripping from his mouth. "You can't kill what's already under your skin," he said. His hands began to change, bones twisting, skin turning gray and cracked like stone. "It's calling you, Jonah. Same way it called him." He pointed toward the sky. "Look what you've done." And I did. The clouds above the ridge were moving, forming a spiral, black against the red sun, as if the sky itself was bleeding. I holstered the gun and grabbed him by the collar. "You said my brother opened it. What's on the other side?" His lips cracked into something that wasn't a smile. Not hell. Worse. It's memory. Everything this desert ever swallowed. Then his eyes rolled back and he fell forward into the pit. The light flared once, bright enough to blind me, and the whispering stopped. All at once, like the world had exhaled. When I opened my eyes, the sand was still again. The pit was gone, buried under a smooth circle of glassed earth. The wind had died. Even the sun looked pale now, like it had seen too much. I turned to where the foreman had been. Nothing left but his rifle and a single black stone. It wasn't glowing anymore. Just dead weight. I picked it up anyway. It felt cold, too cold for the desert. I rode until night fell, until the ridge was nothing but a shadow behind me. The rock pulsed once in my hand, faint as a dying heartbeat. I should have thrown it away, but when I looked at it under the moonlight, I saw something reflected in its surface. A face, not Eli's, mine. Older, hollow, smiling like the man in the desert who'd told me it was too late. I dropped it in the sand and kept riding, but I swear I could still hear it whispering my name with every hoofbeat. Somewhere behind me, the ridge collapsed in on itself, swallowing everything. The hum was gone, but the silence that followed was worse. The kind that feels like waiting. I don't know if I closed that door or if I just locked myself on the wrong side of it. But one thing I do know. When you bury something in the desert, it never stays buried. The sand just waits. And now, it's waiting for me. The desert is quiet again. Maybe too quiet. I've ridden 3 days since the ridge fell, and every night the wind sounds more like a voice. I tell myself it's just memory, that the hum, the whispers, the faces in the sand are nothing but ghosts left behind by men who dug too deep. But when I close my eyes, I still see Eli standing there, hands covered in dust, lips moving in silence. Maybe he's waiting on the other side of that glassed earth. Maybe I'm already halfway there. Folks in the next town won't talk to me. They see the look in my eyes, the way I flinch when the ground trembles. I can't blame them. The Blackridge name is gone now, buried under miles of sand and rumor. But the stone, the one I left behind, I feel it under my skin. Sometimes when the sun hits just right, my shadow hums. That's when I remember what the foreman said. You can't kill what's already under your skin. So I keep riding. Maybe east, maybe nowhere. The desert stretches forever, and the wind carries stories that don't belong to the living. If you ever find yourself out here, and you hear the ground whisper your name, don't answer. Just keep riding, because some graves, no matter how deep you dig, don't stay still for long. This is the story of how I buried my brother in the desert, and found the thing that wouldn't let him rest.